Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Learn English with Podcast Conversation. I'm your host, and today we have an exciting and fun-filled episode for you. I hope you're all doing great and ready to learn some English while having a good time. Remember, learning a new language doesn't have to be boring, it can be an adventure. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's episode. I want to start today's episode with a funny story. Have you ever heard of Murphy's Law? It's the idea that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Well, I experienced Murphy's Law firsthand last weekend. I decided to bake a cake. Simple enough, right? I had all my ingredients ready: flour, sugar, eggs, butter, and baking powder. I preheated the oven and started mixing everything together. As I was cracking the eggs, one slipped out of my hand and fell on the floor. It was a mess. But that was just the beginning. I cleaned up the egg and continued with my cake. I poured the batter into the cake pan and put it in the oven. I set the timer for 30 minutes and decided to relax for a bit. After about 10 minutes, I started to smell something burning. I rushed to the kitchen and opened the oven. To my horror, I realized I had set the temperature too high, and the cake was burnt on the outside, but still raw on the inside. I didn't want to waste the ingredients, so I thought I'd salvage it somehow. I cut off the burnt parts and tried to bake the inside again. This time, I set the temperature correctly. But when I finally took it out, the cake looked more like a pancake, flat and dense. It tasted awful too. So, the moral of the story is, always double-check your oven settings, and maybe don't bake a cake if you're having an off day. Have you ever had a kitchen disaster? It's these funny and sometimes frustrating moments that make life interesting, don't you think? Now, let me ask you some questions to get you thinking in English. Feel free to answer them in your head, or even write down your answers. What is the funniest thing that has ever happened to you in the kitchen? Have you ever tried to cook or bake something and completely failed? What did you learn from that experience? If you could cook any dish perfectly, what would it be and why? Let's learn some new vocabulary related to cooking and baking. Ingredients: the items you use to make a dish, e.g., flour, sugar, eggs. Preheat: to heat the oven to the correct temperature before cooking. Batter: the mixture of ingredients before it is cooked. Salvage: to save something from being a complete failure. Dense: thick and heavy, usually referring to the texture of baked goods. Try to use these words in sentences. For example, I gathered all the ingredients to bake a cake. Make sure to preheat the oven before putting the cake in. Why don't we take a short break with a joke? Laughter is a great way to remember new words and phrases. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. I hope that made you chuckle. Remember, jokes can be a fun way to learn and practice English. Let's talk a bit about idioms. Idioms are phrases that don't make sense literally, but have a figurative meaning. Learning idioms can be tricky, but also fun and useful. Here are a few food-related idioms. Piece of cake: something very easy. Learning English is a piece of cake with this podcast. Spill the beans: to reveal a secret. I accidentally spilled the beans about the surprise party. Butter someone up: to flatter someone to get something. He's just trying to butter you up so you'll do his homework. Try to use these idioms in your conversations. It will make your English sound more natural. Now, let me tell you another story. This one is about a day at the beach. Who doesn't love the beach, right? It was a sunny day, and I decided to go to the beach with some friends. We packed a picnic basket with sandwiches, fruits, and drinks. We also took a frisbee, a beach ball, and a big umbrella to keep us shaded. When we got to the beach, we set up our spot near the water. The first thing we did was run into the ocean. The water was cool and refreshing. We swam and played games in the water for hours. One of my friends, Mark, tried to show off his diving skills, but ended up belly flopping into the water. It was hilarious. We couldn't stop laughing. After swimming, we were starving. We sat down to eat our picnic. As we were enjoying our sandwiches, a seagull swooped down and snatched one right out of my hand. I couldn't believe it. The bird flew away with my lunch, and all my friends laughed at my shocked expression. In the afternoon, we played frisbee on the sand. But the wind was strong, and the frisbee kept flying off course. At one point, it landed right in the middle of a group of sunbathers. We had to apologize and retrieve our frisbee, but everyone was in good spirits and laughed it off. As the sun began to set, we gathered around to watch the beautiful sunset. The sky turned shades of orange, pink, and purple. It was the perfect end to a fun-filled day. Let's think about some more questions. Have you ever had a funny or unusual experience at the beach? What is your favorite thing to do at the beach? If you could visit any beach in the world, where would you go and why? Learning through stories. Stories are a powerful way to learn a new language. They help you understand context, learn new vocabulary, and enjoy the process. So, let's break down some of the vocabulary from the beach story. Picnic basket. A container used to carry food and drinks for a picnic. Refreshing. Something that makes you feel fresh and cool. Belly flopping. Falling into water flat on your stomach, often causing a loud splash. Swooped. When a bird dives down quickly. Retrieve. To get something back. Here are some sentences using these words. We packed a picnic basket full of delicious food. Swimming in the ocean was so refreshing. Mark tried to dive, but ended up belly flopping. A seagull swooped down and took my sandwich. I had to retrieve our frisbee from the sunbathers. Why don't we take another short break with a joke? Here's one for you. What do you call a fake noodle? An imposter. I hope that brought a smile to your face. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes while learning. Just like jokes, sometimes mistakes can be funny and a good way to remember what not to do next time. Let's switch gears and talk about hobbies. Having hobbies is a great way to relax and enjoy your free time. It's also a fantastic way to practice English if your hobby involves reading, writing, or speaking. Do you have a hobby? Maybe you like to read books, paint, play a musical instrument, or play sports. Hobbies can be anything you enjoy doing in your spare time. Let me share with you a bit about my hobby. I love gardening. There's something so satisfying about planting a seed and watching it grow. I have a small garden in my backyard where I grow vegetables, herbs, and flowers. Every morning, I spend some time watering the plants and checking on their progress. One day, I found a tomato plant that had grown very tall but had no tomatoes. I was puzzled. I checked the soil, the water, and even talked to it. Yes, I talked to my plants. After some research, I realized it needed more sunlight. I moved it to a sunnier spot, and a few weeks later, it was full of tomatoes. It was such a rewarding experience. Let's think about your hobbies. What is your favorite hobby and why do you enjoy it? Have you ever learned something surprising from your hobby? If you could start a new hobby, what would it be and why? Here are some words related to hobbies. Gardening, the activity of growing plants and taking care of them. Herbs, plants used for flavoring food, such as basil or mint. Satisfying, something that gives you pleasure or fulfillment. Research, the process of finding information about something. Rewarding, something that provides satisfaction and a sense of achievement. Try to use these words when talking about your hobbies. For example, I find gardening very satisfying. Growing herbs is a great way to add fresh flavors to your meals. Doing research on my hobby helps me improve. Did you know that the longest word in English has 45 letters? It's pneumonal ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis, which is a type of lung disease caused by inhaling fine silica dust. Isn't that interesting? Don't worry, you don't need to remember it. It's just a fun fact to impress your friends with. We've covered a lot today. We talked about funny stories, learned new vocabulary, explored idioms, and discussed hobbies. Remember, the key to learning English is to practice regularly and make it fun. Listen to stories, read books, watch movies, and talk to friends. The more you use the language, the more comfortable you will become. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. Don't forget to share your thoughts and stories with me. I love hearing from you. Thank you for joining me today. Keep practicing and stay curious. Until next time, happy learning. Goodbye.